Before European intervention, the continent of Africa was a developed, sophisticated civilization with some culture. After the intervention of the Europeans, however, the continent was far worse off than before. Political unrest can be found more commonly in the economic stability of some regions of this continent have taken a significant hit from being one of the strongest and most important in the world, now fostering some of the poorest countries in the world due to the tale of the self-righteous Europeans and their scramble for Africa, an event that can be directly tied to how it caused the rise, fall, and horrific rule of the Central African Emperor Jean Bedel Bokassa. The Mali Empire was an empire founded within the African continent. It became incredibly wealthy through its trading of gold and salt. However, as their power, wealth, and influence grew, so did the amount of people that wanted it. This, coupled with the tales of Mansa Musa, the assumed richest man in history, made Europe jealous. The idea to them that there was a land full of resources, but the people there were unaware of the magnitude of what they were in possession of, led them to believe that they had not only the right, but the responsibility to step in and attempt to civilize the civilized people of this land. Their society was less developed, so to the Europeans, their input was meaningless. On November 15, 1884, 14 of the largest and most powerful European countries came together to discuss how to control Africa's natural resources. They practiced the idea of social Darwinism, the belief to them that some groups, in this case the civilized Europeans, were superior and had a responsibility to civilize other groups, in this case the natives of Africa, regardless of what these groups wanted or really needed. As seen later, this incredibly incorrect and narcissistic ideology never truly left the minds of some Europeans. These 14 countries invited to the Berlin Conference were Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and the United States of America. Africa, the continent being discussed, had no input on how they were being divided and exploited. Lots of horribly immoral and violent actions were taken as a result of this meeting. However, for the story of Jean Bedel Bokassa and the history of the Central African Empire, the primary focus will be put on France. Barthélemy Boganda was the man elected to represent the African people to the French Parliament. An important step, Boganda founded the Movement for the Social Evolution of Black Africa, or MESAN. In 1957, MESAN won control of the Territory Assembly, and in 1958 the territory was granted self-governance by France, with Boganda being elected president. Unfortunately, Boganda died in a plane crash in 1959, not living to see the territory he fought for become independent in 1960. After Boganda's passing, his nephew, David Dacko, became president in 1964. Dacko was well-meaning, turning the Central African Republic into a one-party state with MESAN as that party. He wanted to raise the standard of living for the people of his country, and his undeniable grave miscalculation, however, came when he asked his cousin to reorganize the Central African Republic's army. His cousin, a man named Jean Bedel Bokassa. Bokassa was born on February 22, 1921, in Bobangui in the Central African Republic. His mother killed herself when he was a child after his father was murdered for refusing to do labor for the French. He grew up in France, so much so that he became a French citizen. He joined the fight in World War II and became such a skilled combatant that he rose to the rank of general and won the Légion d'honneur, which is the highest decoration any soldier can receive in the French military. Not only this, but he also received the Croix de Guerre, which is given to those who distinguish themselves in combat. All of this brought him close to the leader of France and looked impressive to the people of the Central African Republic. Bokassa was then appointed colonel of the military by his cousin and quickly rose to army chief of staff. Dacko had once been quoted saying that his cousin Bokassa was too stupid to stage a coup, a sentence that deserves a place in history as one of the most poorly aged quotes. For in 1965, the country's economy was struggling greatly and barely keeping afloat. This worried France, who called in their old constituent, Jean Bedel Bokassa. Now backed with French economic and military support, Bokassa overthrew his cousin in a coup d'etat that resulted in the deaths of 8 people. The French government was not done with this country yet, as can be seen later. With Bokassa now president, things very quickly turned south, as he declared himself president for life and later emperor, renaming the country the Central African Empire. He held his coronation on the anniversary of the coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte. Not only did Bokassa pick the same date as Napoleon, but the same outfit as well. While Bokassa had been instituted to help the economy, he spent $20 million on his coronation. Adjusted today for inflation, that's $90 million, which was the first of many red flags waved by the newly declared emperor. Quickly becoming unpopular due to his authoritative ruling style and for dissolving the National Assembly, protests were held by middle school aged students who were put in detention, and many of whom were killed for speaking out against their new emperor, some reportedly by the emperor himself. There are also many widespread allegations of cannibalism leveled against Bokassa, although nothing concrete was ever presented. However, what was proven was that he fed his enemies to lions and crocodiles. France took 16 years to realize their mistake. 16 years of terror and corruption came as a result of French interference. They bat France took 16 years to realize their mistake. 16 years of terror and corruption came as a result of French interference. They then backed Dacko, who had been under house arrest by Bokassa, to lead another coup d'etat, this time to right their previous mistake. Dacko lasted until 1981, when another coup d'etat was led by a man named André Kolingba. In 1986, Bokassa returned from his exile to be immediately arrested and tried for murder and embezzlement. He was sentenced to death, but nothing ever came from it. He died in his vacant mansion, now nearly worthless, surrounded by the family he would leave nothing for. He died of a heart attack on November 3rd, 1996. Both coups against Dacko were important moments in the history of the Central African Republic as they helped to highlight the instability of the political leaders of the country. France arrived in Africa in the late 19th century, yet were too stubborn to leave and desperately wanted control no matter how they had to get it. They believed that regardless of how they affected the people there, it was their burden because they were more civilized. Now the country is stricken with debt, political turmoil, and lower standard of living than what was there before the French. Many today see the scramble for Africa as a dark period that should be remembered and taught that once many of the European countries granted independence, it was over, but it's not. France has tried to fix these countries, but they did not try hard enough. All that's left is bodies and not enough money to substantially make an impact. France has made a good effort to undo their mistakes by those in the past, yet have failed to make proper progress towards any help to the people of the continent. As long as they don't back any Belgic-esque candidates, however, they're doing a lot better than they did.